Hello everyone and welcome to another Outtro video. If you're new to this channel, I post videos on self-publishing, AuthorTube, and everything to do with those things. Today I will be doing a special edition video for you guys where I show off my lovely book collection, which you can see behind me here. I'm really excited to show them off because there are some books in here that I just love and I just want to share them with you in case you might love them too. So without any further ado, let's get to the books. Alright, actually before I get to the books, I just wanted to point out that my shelf is split up between different book categories. So this is how I have my shelf set up and organized. The part of the shelf that is most visible to you right now is my fiction collection. So there's more in the back, there's more behind here too actually, but this is where I have all my fiction books. What you may have noticed about my collection, my fiction book collection, is that I love Stephen King. Stephen King style books are going to be my next genre, so it's going to be very important for me to read a lot of Stephen King books because I'm going to write in a similar genre to him. So like, you know, psychological kind of mixed with, you know, a bit of fantastical and sci-fi and adult. That's pretty much the type of books he writes as well. And also Black Mirror would be a good show contrast to that. So something very psychological, plays a lot with your mind and that kind of thing. Yeah, and because of that, I have a lot of books that are kind of horror style. I wouldn't say thriller, not so much thriller, a bit suspense maybe, but horror. I love post-apocalyptic fiction. My favorite kind of fiction is the kind where there's some kind of sci-fi or fantastical element that's weaved into a realistic setting. So rather than pure fantasy, it's a magical realism type thing where the characters are real people set in reality, like our current reality, but then there's one or a few more fantastical or sci-fi elements weaved into it. So kind of like how Stephen King does in his books. I really, really love that. That's my favorite kind of genre, and that's the genre that I hope to write in as well for my next series. Alright, so first off, I'm gonna show you my all-time favorite books, my favorite ever, and then I will move down the list to all the other books. Alright, so first off, we have my favorite collection of short stories, a collection of horror short stories to be specific, and that is the John Skipp collection. I have two books by John Skipp, Psychos and Zombies. He has a couple more. I've also read the Shapeshifters one, Werewolves and Shapeshifters, I believe, and that one is just as good. So I just don't have it, but I hope to get it one day because it's just as good as these two. But let me show you them again here. John Skipp. So as you can see, it's just a collection of short fiction. You know, all the horror writers here, Neil Gaiman, you get Ray Bradbury, Stephen King is in some of them as well. You get all the big ones, and then you get lesser known ones like Bentley Little. I love Bentley Little's writing. Life with Father. Oh, that one is, yeah, that one is pretty good. And then here in the Zombies one again, you get here Neil Gaiman, Stephen King, Max Brooks, Ray Bradbury, so many good ones. There's lots of really good collections out there that include some really good stories, like from Stephen King and even George R.R. Martin as well. The Meat Hook Man by George R.R. Martin is one of my favorites, and that's not in here. It's in another collection I read years ago, but there's some really good collections out there. These aren't the only ones that I really love, but John Skipp, I just always love his books. Like, consistently have loved every book collection that I've read of his. So, you know, he does not disappoint when it comes to horror short story collections. All right, so next up we have none other than Stephen King, of course. Pet Cemetery, or Pet Cemetery, I never know how to pronounce it. But either way, it's a really, really good book. Probably my favorite Stephen King book so far that I've read. And I've seen on other AuthorTube channels, other authors talking about this as like in their top few favorite horror books. And it's for good reason. It's so good. It combines the psychological with the supernatural very, very well, as Stephen King is known to be good at doing. And it just, the sense of grief and loss that is evoked in this book is like none other. Like, you think, when you're reading this, you assume the role of the character, and anyone who's experienced grief or loss can really relate to this book, and you'll be crying when you read this because, you know, the main character's motivations are very relatable. Like, even if you haven't lost anyone in your life and you read this, you will feel like you have. Basically, that's how good this is. And I know the book I have here is kind of worn, but that doesn't matter. It's still one of the greatest books ever, in my opinion. And I actually really like, personally, I really like this worn cover feel. I love this cover. I prefer the old horror covers to the new ones. Like, I will give you an example right now of a new cover. Here's Misery by Stephen King, and other than this thing covering part of his name, it's okay. It's an okay cover, but I prefer the old ones, for sure. Here's an example of another Stephen King cover, new cover of It. Again, I prefer the old ones. There's, I guess, nothing wrong with the new ones. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just the old ones really reflect the horror a lot more. And but speaking of It, well, It is next on the list. It is next on the list. It is the best book I've never read. So I haven't actually read this book yet, but I know I'm gonna love it. I've watched the movie. I've watched both movies, and I loved both of them. Just an aside here, the Pet Sematary movie, not the best, but it is pretty good. But I know I'm going to love it because I've looked into it and I've heard many good things about it, and those same people who have put Pet Sematary on their top horror fiction novels list have actually put it ahead of Pet Sematary most of the time. So I know I'm gonna love this, so I included this on the list even though I haven't read it yet. But very, very big book. I think it's about a couple 100,000 words, this book. It's insane. Like, Stephen King, his books, they're really something. All right, next on the list is actually a different kind of book. So this is actually an illustrated book, and I've read it very recently, and I just loved it so much. Like I said before, I'm a huge fan of post-apocalyptic horror fiction, and this fit right in with everything I love about a book, and it also has amazing art. So this is The Electric State by Simon Stalenhag. He's a Swedish, I believe, artist, and this book is just so good. It's pretty short because most of it is artwork, his artwork, but it is just the best thing. I'll show you a bit into what his artwork looks like in a moment, but yeah, this would probably be my favorite illustrated book. Next on the list would be Watchmen. So as a comic book, I love Watchmen. I didn't like the movie that much, but the comic book is very, very good. It has themes of like morality and, you know, it's kind of like superheroes, but more like anti-heroes. And I'm not a huge fan of superhero movies, superhero fiction or fantasy, but I love Watchmen because it's just a more realistic take on like the mixing of you know, villain and hero and what it actually means to be moral when you have to make moral decisions. So it's more like realistic to me, so I prefer that. But those two, this and The Watchmen, are my favorite. I know Watchmen is a comic, it's not an illustrated book, it's a comic, two different things, but as far as like books that have artwork, these two are my favorite. So Simon Stalenhag makes this amazing art that's depicting a post-apocalyptic alternative 80s, and that's basically the remnants of a technological warfare. And this particular book, The Electric State, is depicting an alternate US in the 80s. So, you know, some of the art, or all of the art, is, you know, it's like this. It's beautiful, beautiful art. And I love this kind of thing where, you know, it's similar to a sort of cosmic kind of horror where you kind of realize how insignificant we are as humans, and then, you know, this tech is looming up in the background, you know, threatening to, you know, take over everything. And this, his art just depicts this to an amazing level. And like, look at this. These structures looming up in the background. Anyway, I won't show you the entire book, but I highly, highly recommend it. It's very good in terms of post-apocalyptic, sort of cosmic kind of horror, and very, very good art. Like, they look like photos, but these are actually paintings. He painted these. It's just very, very... And it's got a very intriguing story as well. There's little, you know, there's, see, like, alongside every photo, or, sorry, every painting, I just said it was photos, yeah. You can see there's a story that goes along with it. So the story is also very good. Highly recommend this book. All right, moving on to number 2 on the list of my all-time favorite books. This is number 2 on the list. It's very similar to the last book, that it's a post-apocalyptic novel. This one's actual novel. The other one was illustrated book with the story, but this one's actually a novel. But they're very similar, actually, in the content, because both of them involve a young girl traveling across the US in a post-apocalyptic era. This one, though, is not a technological warfare remnant background, but it's a zombie apocalypse. So that's the main difference in the world. But this book is really, really good. Like, the language is a bit more on the poetic side. So if you love poetic kind of language, you know, lots of metaphors, lots of very quotable, hard-hitting statements that make you think, then you will love this book. And I love that, so I love this book. And this is called The Reapers Are the Angels by Alden Bell. I read this book a couple of years ago. I had taken it out of the library because I was going on a zombie apocalypse fiction binge, and this one was my favorite zombie apocalypse book out of all of them that I binged. So I was like, I have to buy this. It's so good. It's very interesting book because it juxtaposes beauty with like horrific things like zombies, you know, gore and all that stuff. So it's kind of merging these two things together. It has very, very beautiful descriptions about the world, but then, you know, in the next second, Temple, the main character, goes and kills off a zombie or something. You know, it's kind of merging the two together very well, in my opinion, and very well written as well. Very good themes in this book. Temple is kind of a loner on the run, and I'm not going to give away too much about the book because I don't want to give spoilers about it, but it has a very good story and very good characters too. It's just a very, very good book, and I highly recommend it if you are looking for a post-apocalyptic zombie novel. I also want to add to that, to The Reapers Are the Angels, that if any of you have read The Road, it's kind of similar to The Road. I have not actually read The Road. It has been recommended to me so many times. I've read parts from it, and it's kind of similar to that. Like, The Road is kind of a similar style as well. So if any of you have read The Road and you love The Road, then you will most likely also like The Reapers Are the Angels as well. Okay, so this is not actually a book, but I have the book version of it because I just love the movie so much, and the musical, because it's actually a musical originally. And this is a horror, dark comedy kind of musical set in the 1800s, and I just love it so much. But that is Sweeney Todd. So like I said, this is not a book. I mean, this is a book, but it's not an actual novel. It's just kind of like the screenplay of it or something. I haven't actually read it yet, but anyway, I've watched the movie countless times, you know, the one with Johnny Depp and the entire cast of Harry Potter, but I've also seen the play many times. One of the times I've seen it, I actually sat in the front, and I was so excited to watch it because I loved the movie. I was obsessed with it ever since seeing it back when it was in theaters in like 2008, I think it was, or 2009. I still remember it came out on New Year's or on Christmas, one of the two. So I remember seeing it either on New Year's or Christmas, and yeah, I was in grade 8 at the time. Time flies. But yeah, I love the movie, and I, for some reason, own the screenplay book of it that I haven't read, but this is another one I would recommend. It's not a book, just to reiterate that, but I just thought I would put this on the list because it is in my collection, so yeah. Alright, so now for number 1. Okay, what's number 1 on my list? Those of you who know me probably know what this number 1 is going to be, but those of you who don't, this is my all-time favorite book. It's been that way ever since I picked it up from the library in grade 7. I think it was grade 7, grade 6 or 7. My local library was having a sale of books, and they were 50 cents for paperback and $1 for hardcover. And they were selling these books because I guess the library didn't want it anymore. And at that time, I was like a book hoarder, you know. I was the type of person that would just read any book I got my hands on. So I was ecstatic when I heard about this library sale. So I got a whole bunch of books together, and this one book, that's how I got it. So I got the paperback version of this book, and it's been my favorite book ever since I read it then in grade 7. This book is actually classified as a sci-fi, I think, but it's more like a sci-fi, it's like a magical realism sci-fi, because there's only one element of sci-fi in it, and the rest is just set in reality, which, as I've mentioned in the beginning of this video, is my all-time favorite kind of book. So this is a great example of that kind of book, and there's a movie version of it, but I personally did not like the movie. There's also a sequel to it. There's, I think, a second and a third book, but I did not like those. So this is the only book that I like, the first book of this book. Okay, so what book is this? What book? Okay, so the book is Jumper. Okay, so if you have seen the movie, don't write off this book just because of the movie, because the movie is absolutely nothing like the book. I have ranted about this so many times throughout my life to people that this is the furthest movie adaptation from a book I have ever seen, in the sense that it's not like the book at all. Like, it's completely not. It's not even for the same audience. The movie is like PG, you know, almost G, PG, one of the two, where it's not the same. It's not the same. I don't want to reveal too much because I'm always afraid of spoiling people or giving spoilers to people, however you want to say that. So I don't want to reveal too much about the difference, but it's a lot more realistic. It's a lot more real and raw. You know, the movie was very toned down to a more generic kind of audience, you know? This one is, and yeah, for children, I guess. But this one is, it deals with a lot of themes that the movie does not even touch on at all. One of which is actually terrorism. That's a big part of this book, actually, terrorism. But the movie just completely leaves it out, like I said, for the PG audience or whatever. But if you are looking for something that's, again, like I had described, plus real and raw and more adult themes than the movie, then don't write this book off, because it's a very good book. And it's like, in Pet Sematary, I mentioned that it deals with a lot of grief and loss. This book also deals with a lot of grief and loss and very realistic problems that people have. Jumping, which is teleporting, is named for teleporting in this book, is the only thing that the main character, Davy, can do. So he can teleport, basically, to any place that he can imagine, but that's the only thing in the book that's not realistic. Everything else is completely real. He has to deal with life the same as everyone else does, same issues, same problems, and it's all about dealing with the issues that he can't jump away from. And I thought that was a really good message, you know, deep message, you know, that there are some issues that, like, even if you could teleport, you can't teleport away from those things. And teleporting is my favorite superpower. Like, if I had a superpower, and if I could choose what superpower I could have, it would be teleporting, like 100%, because then I could go anywhere in the world at any moment in time, and I love to see new places and I love to travel, so that would be my number one choice for superpowers. So that's probably another reason why I love this book, but that's not the only reason, and that's not even the main reason. The main reason is because of what I said about the book earlier. But anyways, if you like that kind of book too, you might want to check it out. Okay, so those are my top fiction books that I have on my shelf. This will be all for this video because it's getting too long and I don't want to keep it going for too long. But if you're interested in any of my other books that you see here, you know, drop a comment and I can certainly talk about them if you like. Or, you know, and in a later video, I will maybe talk about all the books that I have that helped with my writing. Like, I've mentioned a few of them in another video too, a few of the ones I would recommend. But, you know, there's a lot of books here that helped me with my self-publishing and my writing, and this is blocking the way here. You can see all of them here. So I might do another video on that, where I talk about these books as well, and so stay tuned for that. And feel free to drop a comment if any of these books specifically are of interest to you for me to talk about, because whatever you guys want, I could talk about, you know? This channel is all for you guys. Alright, so that's it for this video, and give it a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!